Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. Funding for Chautauqua Sunrise is provided in part by the Chautauqua County Industrial Development Agency, with offices in Jamestown, Dunkirk, and Westfield, helping businesses to prosper throughout Chautauqua County. From supporting people with disabilities to enjoy great lives to providing health care services that are available to anyone, the Resource Center has been improving our county for more than 60 years. Learn more about how the Resource Center makes a positive difference in people's lives. From the Access Chautauqua Studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Chautauqua. We are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week from 9 to 10 a.m. Send events via email or call us live. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. And now, from the Access Chautauqua Studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Morning, everybody. I'm Doc Hamels, and welcome to another episode or edition of Chautauqua Sunrise. And I want to first put it out there that we are taping ahead of time, so this is a pre-tape show. And as much as you may want to call in and talk to me or my guest, we're not going to be here. But if you do want to talk to my guest, we are going to make sure that we provide a phone number, contact information that you can get a hold of her later on after the show if you choose to. Also, I don't want to discourage you from sending us any announcements that you may have. You can always send it to Chautauqua Sunrise here at the studio. They're going to pop up the email address here while I'm talking. There it is. It's Chautauqua Sunrise, all one word, at gmail.com, okay? Or you could call 716-753-5225, and you can leave a message on our machine, okay? And they'll get it to me, and we'll make sure it's all printed up on this fancy paper here, and then we'll announce it when we are live once again. So anyways, good morning to all of you that are watching this show right now, and good afternoon to people around the world, and also to you folks that are listening to us on WRFA 107.9, low power to the people in Jamestown. Thanks for tuning in on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. We're going to have a rather provocative, thought-provoking, soul-searching kind of a show here. We're going to be talking, I'm going to tell you right now, about sexual assault awareness. And this is something that that I personally feel strongly about, and that we're going to delve into a little deeper. Diana Butcher's going to be my guest. She was on here back in very into summertime, early fall, I think it was. And we're going to take it to the next level of discussion. So stick around. You're going to learn some things today. All right. Let's see. What else do I want to tell you? I got some announcements that I'm going to share with you, and I also want to tell you that I hope that you're enjoying some spring-like weather. I can't look into my crystal ball right now, so I'm assuming since the last time I was on the show last week that the weather was good this week. So we'll see if it's true or not. Okay, We're going to go right into our announcements because we want to keep a lot of time for my guest here. So, Jeff, let's jump right on number 17. This is called Sassy Bags, and this is through the Resource Center. So let's see what they have to say here. It says, due to COVID restrictions, this year's Sassy Bags Blingo is going to look different, but we are taking it to a new level with 20 prizes in 20 days. Please see details on the graphic there. All right, and if you're watching or listening on radio, you're going to have to either look at the show or go to their website. If you would like to purchase tickets, please call 661-1477, or you can use the online version, and that would be go to fillingthegap.net/events, and then you'll find Sassy Bags Blingo, and you can purchase tickets there as well. Money raised, this is a good one, for the WOW Fund. WOW, one of the Resource Center's funds that is managed by the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation. This fund supports persons with disabling conditions in fulfilling their wishes and dreams to enjoy recreational and travel experiences based on financial need. This fund was created in memory of a TRC, the Resource Center employee, who died in 2010. Are you feeling lucky? Well, be sure to get your tickets for the Sassy Bags Blingo fundraiser, and this is going to end in a couple days. So by the end of March, so you've got, today's the 29th, 30th, and 31. So get your tickets, and they're going to have those drawings. Looks like they're going to announce all the winners throughout. Oh, wait a minute. You get your tickets until the end of March, and then they're going to start drawing throughout the month of April. I see. Okay. They didn't give me all the details. Again, 661-1477 for more information. Okay. Moving right ahead. Shred It. Kind of interesting title, huh? Shred It. April 3rd in Westfield Hospital, the Westfield Memorial Hospital parking lot. $10 per box. What in the world would you want to do with this? If you got all those papers like I do, all those bills and things that are getting old and you don't know what to do with them and you're afraid to put them in your garbage because some Russian spy is going to dig up your garbage and find out personal information, you can go to the Westfield Memorial Hospital parking lot, and they're going to charge you only $10 per box. And what you do is you fill up one of their boxes. It's not your box, all right? And they'll shred it for you so that nobody can ever tell what you did. It's sponsored by the Westfield Memorial Hospital Auxiliary, who does unbelievably good work for the hospital, and they provide lots of decorating and services, and just they make the hospital what it is as far as the looks and a lot of support services. So the Shred It, April 3rd. Okay, Tarp Skunks. As you know, those are the baseball players over in Jamestown, and we had those guys on not too long ago, and they want you to know the following. The Jamestown Tarp Skunks have released their schedule for the 2021 season, and it's going to begin June 10th, and they're going to be playing the Batavia Muck Dogs. And then the next day, they're doing a back-to-back Elmira Pioneers on Friday, June 11th. Both games are set for 7 p.m. first pitch. The guys here and I, we're talking about going maybe the opening night. We'll see. What do you think, Justin? That'd be fun. Sure. All right. Russell Dietrich, who's the president of the baseball group there, he says the following: it'll be fantastic to hear play ball once again at our historic stadium. To the leadership of the Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League, our sponsors, partners, and financial backers, we extend a heartfelt thanks for your support and vision. To our loyal fans, we say thank you for being part of Jamestown's rich baseball tradition yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He also said, to protect our fans, players, and staff, we will be complying with New York State Health Department guidance regarding COVID-19 safeguards. So, I'm sure you'll be wearing masks. They probably have seating spaced out, and you've got to use a lot of wash your hands and just do what you're supposed to do. 2021, listen to this, 2021, this year marks the 80th anniversary of the stadium, which is now named the Russell E. Dietrich Jr. Park. The Tarp Skunks are hosting the Batavia, as we said, but the thing is, 80 years ago, that was the team they played, first game ever in the stadium. So this is sort of like 80 years later, coming full circle. So pretty cool, huh? So they have some dates that you might want to know about. I already told you about June 10th being the home opener. June 11th is going to be Community Discount Card Night. June 28th is $2 night. I don't know what that means. Everything's $2 to get in? I don't know. July 2nd, and the 4th of July, kickoff fireworks. July 12th, $2 night again. Let's see, July 24th, Christmas in July and Fan Appreciation Night. That sounds like fun. So they got a lot of cool things going on, and I believe we're going to try to get them back on here to talk a little bit more about what's going on with the Tarp Skunks. So stay tuned. All right, we're going to move ahead here. This is last call on this one. Easter is next week. If I got my, it's hard to talk in the future, so I got to remember it's next week. Okay, this is from our folks and friends at the Safety Village in Asheville. The Chautauqua Safety Village will be hosting our Easter Carnival this year on Saturday, April 3rd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We will once again be modifying the event to make it a drive-through where vehicles can enter through the back of the village, drive around the property to get candy, and back out. We learned so much from our Halloween event, and we'll be modifying the entrance-exit strategy and route as a result to make it more efficient. We will have the Asheville Fire Department directing traffic again, and we'll be monitoring traffic flow very carefully. We have a variety of ideas that will make this event fun and safe for everyone, and we'll station these things around the route where people are waiting to keep them busy. We would love to have you or a representative participate in the event by decorating the outside of your building if you're part of the village and so forth. And they're looking for volunteers that hand out candy. So if you're interested in listening, you can give them a call. And the number there is 338-0170. And you can ask for Jessica Dayton. Again, 338-0170. And the Easter Carnival at the Safety Village on April 3rd from 10 to 1 p.m. Okay, and finally, this is sort of one of those mark your calendars. Okay, the Hope Chautauqua is a substance use prevention coalition. They envision a healthy, drug-free community where all residents have an equal opportunity to reach their full potential. Their mission is to create an environment where all youth can develop into healthy and productive adults through the promotion and implementation of healthy lifestyle changes and choices, and the use of evidence-based community-level substance use interventions. Good Lord, I can't read. Please run with us and help you. Okay, so if I got this right, this is going to be running through the whole month of May, and you can register by April 10th, and it costs $20. And if you're interested, you give them a call. I'm looking for information here. I guess this is through Prevention Works. I almost always have their phone number here. Well, anyways, contact Prevention Works. I'm sure they're in the phone book, and you can get registered for Run for Hope. Okay, we're going to take a little breather, and we'll be right back, so stay tuned, and this one is for you.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Okay, and we're back. And so today we are welcoming back Diana Butcher, who is the program director at the Salvation Army and News Center. And Diana, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be back. Thanks.
I was looking back at my notes, and you were here like about 6 months ago or something like that. I can't believe that much time has gone by. We were sitting here and saying, we got to do another show, and here we are doing another show. And the reason why is because April is a special month. So
Yes.
What is April for you?
So April, SAM, is Sexual Assault Awareness Month,
And the Salvation Army, a new center, is not only the domestic violence program for the community, but it also is the rape crisis program. So we provide a lot of services for survivors of sexual assault, sexual abuse, or rape. And so it was a movement that started in the 70s. If you want to talk a little bit about the history.
Yeah, sure.
So in the 70s, there was, of course, women's movements were happening, and they were recognizing violence and domestic violence at the time, and also recognizing sexual assault. And there was a very famous case in California that involved Ted Bundy, which I know everybody knows about. A lot of I can't even remember how many victims he had, victims of murder and sexual assault. So that, I think, on the West Coast kind of was a catalyst to organize and bring more awareness and education about sexual assault. And then in the great state of Pennsylvania, they have a long-standing coalition against domestic violence. They also started to recognize sexual assault as, a form of control and power, but also violence against women. And by the 80s, the movement was really kind of moving along, and it went from a day of recognition. Advocacy programs were surveyed, and they said, let's pick a day in April. And the first Tuesday, I believe, initially was what was recognized as the day to recognize Sam. And then it grew into a whole week. And eventually in the 2000s, it was recognized as a month. And I believe it was in the first year of Obama's presidency that he declared the whole month. So April is recognized as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Being the age that I am, I remember very clearly everything was changing in America, everything. For whatever reason, it was changing, and there was a strong voice from women that they just weren't going to put up with garbage anymore. Gloria Steinem and all those folks. And I was in college at the time, and I mentioned when I opened the show today that this is something I take very seriously. Having been in college and, hanging out with my friends, many of them were females, and realizing and listening that what they had to say was so important. And growing up, as a young kid playing ball and stuff like that, you really didn't think much about it. But when I looked at it more seriously, I realized, for whatever reason, whoever, I don't know, women have been abused in so many ways that wasn't even physical to start with. They were used in advertisements to sell cigarettes, cars, whatever. They were second-rate citizens.
Right, and if you look at some of those old ads in the media, everything was very sexualized, or by today's standards, you would say, wow, that was really demeaning, or right, women as property, historically, that those things all tie together.
And when I look at the TV shows, Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, it wasn't Mother Knows Best, it was the man. And look at the Honeymooners. I mean, they were these dominant, mean men, calling their wives names and all that. I mean, it's just, it never seemed to settle well with me. I know it was supposed to be, Archie Bunker. It was supposed to be funny, but I never took it as funny that's the way I was wired, I guess. And so, I've always raised my kids, whether it was my daughter or my sons, let's sort this all out here. And, you boys respect women equally, and my daughter, don't put up with anything. And that's how they're raised. And the boys are very kind, and they're great, husbands and dads. And my daughter, she holds her own, and I'll say to her, wow, where did you get that idea? And she goes, from my dad. And so to watch this whole movement unfolding, it's been very moving to me personally to see that you even had to do it. I mean, why did this even have to take place? And historically, I guess this just goes back centuries. I don't even know why. Men are supposedly stronger and bigger, and they just domineered, but that's just so unfair. And the fact that you have to have a whole month for women recognition, great scientists and great scholars and philosophers and medical doctors and all the accomplishments we wouldn't be on the moon if it wasn't, I mean, it just goes on, and I'm sitting here going like, now why did I not know this? So I'm so glad you guys are standing the ground and saying no more of this. And now with this whole issue about sexual assault, that's this whole hidden taboo that we just don't talk about hardly. Am I wrong on that?
You're not, and so I think that's one of the key things that we need to take away from Sexual Assault Awareness Month is that you can have these conversations and open the doors. It's about educating and awareness, and we understand that everybody has a different level of understanding. It's trying to bring everybody together, a community working together, individuals working together, and understanding what it is and what it isn't, and those myths and misconceptions around sexual assault and rape, and what we can do as individuals, what we can do as a community, and what we can do as men. So we know it's always been talked about as a women's issue or a women's problem, but it's really a societal issue.
Absolutely.
And men have to be included in that, just like with domestic violence. And it's interesting that you talked about your kids, and when they were coming up, you had those conversations. And those conversations can be awkward if we don't know how to have them, or they can be uncomfortable, or you don't know where to go with them. And so that's what Sexual Assault Awareness Month is about. That's why we have prevention educators in place, so that we can teach our kids how to have those conversations and be more comfortable about having those conversations, and starting at a young age, because it starts with boundaries, and this is my body, and I can do with my body what I want, and other people shouldn't be able to take advantage of my body. And you have to teach kids from a very early age, not just about sexual assault, but boundaries just in general as well. They all kind of intertwine.
You sent me way back to my mid-teens, and it's funny and it's sad at the same point, because I'm thinking myself as a dad, and what you just reflected what I said. I remember my mother says, your father wants to talk to you and your brother. I don't know, what do we do now? And my dad was sweating. He was in the living room and he was sweating. And I'm going like, okay. He says, well, you boys sit down. And he had a book, and it was The Talk. And my brother and I kind of look at each other, and my dad was struggling, because my dad was not one of these guys that wanted to talk about these things, because it was sort of taboo. And he was, my mom probably would have been fine with it, but she says, it's your job. And he kind of blurted through it. And then I'm going to say it in different terms, but basically he says, and if you get a girl pregnant, I'll beat the heck out of you. And that's how it ended. And it was like, okay. I still don't know what we're dealing with here, but okay. And that's the way it was, sort of black and white. We didn't talk about boundaries. And so boys get confused because the signals are weird. The girls get confused because the signals are weird. And then we have problems. And so what are we doing about the signals? How do we teach kids? How do we know what we're supposed to be doing?
Exactly. And so there's always, going to be probably questions, and everybody's reacts differently, right, to situations. What do those butterflies mean in my stomach? Because butterflies can be a good thing and butterflies can be a bad thing. Yeah. So we have to teach people how to be in touch with their emotions and the ability to speak up. So I'm all for teaching kids at a very early age. I think at preschool or in kindergarten, we should start teaching about boundaries and healthy relationships.
My body, yeah.
And we should also teach more than just stranger danger, which we can talk about later too, and how that plays into sexual assault and sexual violence. And then as kids are growing up, because like you said, our biology, our physiologies change as we're getting older, and things happen to our bodies. And if we don't know them and understand those changes, we can have very different reactions. And we're not taught to, I come from a different age as well. You're not taught that as a boy you should ask for consent or ask permission, and as a girl you're not taught that you should make sure that they ask for permission or consent. Or some people say, well, it takes the spontaneity out of things. But if we teach people from an early age to do that and interact that way, then it becomes natural and it becomes normal. And why isn't it okay to ask for consent before you do something? And sometimes some of the teenagers, we're in the classrooms teaching about safe dates and healthy relationships, and they'll giggle or laugh, or they'll say, well, sometimes, you just know when you want to lean in for that, and it would just be so, for that kiss, and it would just be so weird to just ask for consent. Well, that's because that's what you've been brought up with, that it would be weird. But if we can retrain the way that we think and how we have boundaries with each other, then it wouldn't be unusual or
Right.
weird.
And
or
all our role
uncomfortable.
models are on TV and YouTube and Facebook and wherever for nowadays, So, and when we were growing up, it was all the romantic movies and
The
things
John
like,
Wayne,
yeah,
grab her by the wrist
or
and pull her in.
Beach Party Bingo with Annette and all those guys, the silly stuff. So again, yeah, it's very complicated.
It is a complicated topic, and sexual assault itself, I guess probably, to define it, sexual assault, when folks where I work at, when we talk about sexual assault, it's an umbrella term, and under that can fall many different kinds of behaviors and actions. It can be everything from touching, or to attempted rape, to sexual abuse, but all of those things are without consent, and underlying there's some form of violence or sexual violence, power and control. It's not necessarily, it can be about the sexual act, but it's underlying that power and control and a violent behavior towards another individual.
So where does the anger come from?
There's different types of perpetrators, and then there's just the general bad behaviors that society has taught us, like that boys will be boys thing. Oh, boy goes up and pinches a girl, or pokes her, or pulls her hair, or whatever. That's we've let that be acceptable, and we've let that go with boys will be boys. But it's not acceptable, and it's not okay, and we have to retrain, all the way up to where psychiatrists and psychologists have broken down the different types of perpetrators, and they fall into different categories. So you have somebody like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, who's very far on the one extreme. They're very rare, thank goodness. The sadist masochistic type of stranger perpetrator, to more of the opportunistic, which is where most of sexual assaults fall under, is the folks that are fall into that category of being opportunistic and acquaintance. So another interesting little tidbit, it's a little bit challenging sometimes to get statistics about sexual assault because you have to have people come forward and they have to disclose.
Right.
But there's a couple of different resources that are trusted resources over the years, and what they find is, obviously, or maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but the majority of victims are female. Any person can be a victim of sexual violence, but it's usually females, usually between the ages of 16 and 24. And about 50 to 52% report that there's been sexual violence with an intimate partner. About 40% it's an acquaintance rape or sexual assault. And the remaining percentage, which is usually between 12 and 17%, is that stranger assault. So that's another way we have to think when we're educating society and our kids. There's always the stranger danger. We should be teaching that. But we also have to realize that a lot of violence is interpersonal violence, whether that's domestic violence or sexual violence. And it's somebody that you know on some level, and it's not that stranger in the dark alley at midnight.
A question just came through on my earpiece. People do monitor the show, and sometimes they'll ask questions. They don't necessarily call in. Where does the LGBT community fit into all this as far as abuse? I mean, as opposed to, is it like an attack, like a negative attack, or is it, where does it fit in?
So there's definitely certain subsets and particular populations like the LGBTQ community who have a higher rate of sexual violence.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different reasons for that, but it comes down to, again, society and how we treat other people, and how we'll victimize people who we may feel that we're allowed to victimize, right? And so we know those folks have been ostracized. And we do see a lot of sexual violence with that group, especially people of color who fall into the LGBT community. Their rates of violence are even higher. And even among women, women who are African American, Black and brown women have a much higher rate. Native population has a much higher rate of sexual violence than other populations.
Wow.
So, I mean, that just goes into what we've been learning about, right? The last 30 years, we've been doing research on our culture and our society and how we've treated different groups of people, and those things just all tie in. Once again, you go back to why would you think that brown or Black women have a higher rate of sexual violence? Well, you go back to the beginning of our country, and they were property.
There you go. Yeah.
And so they people treated them, they were property, and they weren't treated well. So all these generations, we have to work to make those changes.
And we want to think, oh, that was so long ago. It wasn't.
It
That
wasn't so long ago.
Maybe 140, 150 years ago. And in civilizations, that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's just minutes, across the whole time of humanity.
Which brings up a good case, that the recent case in the UK of the woman who was kidnapped and murdered by the, he was a police officer in the UK, Sarah Everhard, I think is how you say her last name. And there's been a huge outcry from that, and there's been an upsurge in that particular country as well, violence against women and women not being safe to be out at night, and they've had a surge of attacks.
Sort of like Jack the Ripper all over,
And what has come to light from that again is in that country as well as in America, when it's a female white victim, they're more likely to get the media coverage than if it's a woman of color.
Really?
And they gave the statistics the other day, I don't have them right off the top of my head, but for a certain period of time, how many attacks had happened on women, and the number of attacks against women who were Black or brown was much higher than white women. But you didn't hear about it until this particular case. So that's another thing that we have to do as a society ourselves and globally, is to look at that and make sure that that's addressed as well.
The whole thing is mind-boggling to me right now. I mean, my head's spinning just thinking about all this. Okay, you use the term opportunistic.
Opportunistic rapist?
Yeah,
So most sexual assaults are committed by an acquaintance or someone that they know.
Okay.
And opportunistic is just that they have easy access to a victim. And the research also shows that most perpetrators are going to target people that they feel are the easiest to target and that they can complete the crime with.
Wow.
So if you make yourself a more difficult target, it's more work, less likely to be successful. And so we know that alcohol is the #1 date rape drug, has been for many, many years. And we find that most of the folks that disclose, when they disclose, there's a situation where they maybe didn't know the person really well, but they've seen them around, or they know their first name, that kind of a situation. Stranger rapes, like I said earlier, are very, very rare. It's only like 12 to 17%, I think, is typical.
Last week I had George Burrell on my show, and we were talking about New York State maybe is going to legalize marijuana. Is there any statistics regarding use of marijuana in rape?
I do not know of any. There probably is some out there, but alcohol and other date rape drugs that were very popular many years ago, like Rohypnol.
They're slipping in drinks and things
right,
like that.
yes. There's a lot more research on that. I'm not sure. I'm sure somewhere out there
I'm
there's
just curious,
research.
because that's one of the things that we were talking about, is we don't know what we don't know, as far as how this is going to affect community at large, and this is not to say that it's going to. It's just, I'm just curious if there was any data on that. We were talking about, once again, about the sending the messages and kids growing up. And when I was a superintendent of schools over in Ripley, I had a young lady one day come up to me and said, "You need to talk to so-and-so." I said, "Oh," and she says, "Well, when we're in line, he touches me where I don't want me to touch." All right. And I don't want him to get in any trouble. I don't want him to stop. That was kind of straightforward. And I thought, okay. So it was very low level assault type things. So I brought the young man into my office and we talked for a little bit. And I think what he was doing is he was trying to get her attention because he liked her and didn't know what was the proper thing. And so we had the talk just between us of how to handle things, and turned out to be a great person and family member and all that stuff down the road. But it's just that silly little stuff that if you don't talk to the kids and explain it, instead of having to be like my poor dad, trying to fumble through it and not know what to say. But are there programs where adults can learn what to say to kids?
I'm sure that there are some out there. I know that our particular programs, we have prevention ed folks who will go and talk to any groups of people about domestic violence and sexual assault, but specifically we have prevention educators who go into the schools and who teach safe dates, which is a nice way to get in and start. It's about healthy boundaries and dating and what that should look like, and talking about consent. So that opens up the door. Our prevention educators will modify any, if they come into a speaking engagement, if there's something particular somebody wants to engage or learn about, we can try and tailor that. Is there something that's like wide scale, or that is, an ongoing learning? I would say I don't know of any
I was just thinking
programs.
of some sound bites that we can give parents to
Right.
say these things. You don't have to make it up. You don't have to, be soaking wet from anxiety and things like that.
Well, the wonderful thing about today's world is we have the internet, and you can Google those things really quickly. We have a Facebook page. We have our 800 number people can call. Our prevention educators are always posting new things on Facebook, and you can communicate. So if somebody does have some questions or a great topic, Mackenzie or Sarandon or Linda will put something together and they'll post that. So we're always open to ideas.
All right, so what is the Facebook page? What will they look for?
It's actually on the awareness sheet. So it's just the Salvation Army and News Center. If you just type in the Salvation Army and News Center under Facebook, it'll pop up.
And is that the only one?
There is a Salvation Army for Jamestown website, but that's for
Well, you got to get the new in there.
Yep.
And you said there's an 800 number, so what's the 800
Yes,
number?
it's 1-800-252-8748. And then there's a local number. It's also the hotline number, but it's 661, and it's 3897.
Okay. And so and you said the hotline number. So who would be calling the hotline?
If you are a survivor
Okay.
of a sexual assault, it doesn't have to be recent. It can be in the past. We have the hotline worker there to do crisis intervention. If you are a recent survivor, they can talk you through some of your options. One of them may be to go to the hospital to get an examination and do the forensic rape exam. And also law enforcement, if you choose to go that route, what that might look like. If you're a past survivor, we have connections to really great community resources where we can hook you up with a therapist or a counselor if that's something you'd like. If it's something that would need case management, we have case managers. There's support groups in the community that are happening. So if somebody, maybe just feels like they need to go to a support group, there's that available as well.
I don't know if this is a rash that's going on right now, but it seems to me I've been seeing more and more and more about certain individuals, personalities. It could be in the media, it could be in politics, it could be wherever, where women are coming forward and saying this happened. And you know where I'm going with this in a minute. And they'll report what happened, and then the next question is, when did this happen? And then they'll say 14 years ago. They'll say it was 20 years ago. It was 30 years ago on an airplane, wherever. And then people start to say, yeah, why are you talking about it now? And I'm saying, and I'm thinking to myself, thank God you're talking about it now, even though it may not bring about a result of any criminal charges or something like that, but think about all those years that person had that in them and could not speak. How therapeutic that must be. Is that what's happening?
It's empowering. Well, I think certainly with the Me Too movement over the last few years has really picked up. It's not anything new. It's been around for a while, but the last few years it's really taken a life of its own. And that's empowered people to be able to speak up and to tell their story because they're being believed. And with sexual assault, it's such a tough crime to be able to come forward and talk about, and it's a tough crime to prosecute as well. Any other crime, you're robbed. Your house is broken into and you're robbed. Your home is the crime scene. If you're a sexual assault survivor, your body is the crime scene. So the intrusiveness of going and getting medical care and telling your story, sometimes multiple times to law enforcement, and then how is that going to affect your family and your friends? We know that the stigma of telling these things, right? There's shame and blame on the victim. That's nothing new. Same with domestic violence. It's tenfold for sexual assault survivors. What did you do? What did you not do? It's always on the victim. It's never on the perpetrator. So I think we've gotten better about flipping the script and putting it more on the perpetrators than the victims. So I think victims are feeling more empowered to come forward. And just because something happened 12 years ago doesn't mean it still isn't powerful for them. And like you said, for them to be able to tell their story and to get it out there and for people to believe and listen and for them to be heard can be really, really healing for survivors.
Are there statutes of limitation on when they can come forward and charge somebody?
There is, and because I'm not a lawyer and I don't want to get too far into it because every state is different and every situation is different, but there are statutes of limitations. So if you are a survivor and you want to know if you still have the ability to report and possibly have criminal charges, you should report it to law enforcement because they're going to be able to take all that information and then they're going to be able to take it to the DA's office to review that to see if that's something that can happen. So it has to be investigated, obviously, and depending on the events that happened, what time, what were the ages between the two people, all of those kinds of things have to be considered for the statute of limitations.
This may seem like an odd question, but I'm thinking about right now somebody that might be watching, and maybe this happened not so long ago. But they're holding back from reporting it. But there might be some things they could do to protect themselves nonetheless. Diaries, talking to friends. Are there other things that they could do to sort of like, in the meanwhile, before I'm ready to make that big announcement or sharing this publicly, are there things that they could be doing to support themselves?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Journaling, certainly. And then, depending on how you feel about that, keeping that safe, because like you said, if you're in a place where you still want it to be very private, you need to protect that. Sharing with family or friends if you're at that point. Sharing with law enforcement. Just because you share and you tell what happened to you doesn't necessarily mean that you have to move forward with prosecution. You can file a report.
But somehow marking time, saying this happened.
This happened.
And I want you to know that it happened so that you're my witness, or at least someone who could say, yeah, she or he told me that, right?
Right.
You know?
And again, being that healing of being able to just tell your story and for someone to listen and to be supportive and to believe you is huge in healing. A lot of people don't want prosecution, and that's okay too. That doesn't mean it was any less effective on them. It doesn't mean that it didn't really happen. Some people choose not to prosecute, and that's fine as well. It's what you want to do and what's going to work for you. So I would suggest to folks who have survived, no matter if it was 2 days ago or 20 years ago, to talk to somebody, a safe person that you can trust.
Right.
And like you said, if it's journaling or if there's something else in the situation that you can document that, if there were other witnesses in the situation. But it's it's tough, but I do have faith that there are people out there who are really starting to understand and to come alongside and realize that this is an important topic to discuss and to bring it out to the light and to believe people so that we can, teach our next generation all those healthy boundaries and how to respect each other, and to take the focus off the victimization as far as it's their responsibility and put it, again, like I said, onto the perpetrators. Like, we have to start addressing and getting men in the conversation, because I'm sorry, but most of the perpetrators are male. Not all, but most. And so you can't fix a problem if you don't bring the other half into the conversation and start to really address it.
Yeah, it's pretty big and complicated. Since we talked, we've been going through this pandemic. Have we seen any surges in this problem or reporting? And the reason being is people are stuck together and tempers are flaring and people acting out, I suspect. I'm guessing. I don't know. I mean, I'd be happy if I was wrong, but I don't think I am.
So the initial feedback that we're getting nationally is that we are seeing a higher level of interpersonal violence, but it's not initially reported because of the pandemic. It's harder to be able to access things like getting to the emergency room. And unfortunately, especially with like child abuse, they're seeing fewer cases being reported and called in, but when they are taken to the hospital, they're more serious injuries and more serious cases. So, it'll probably in a year or two, after time has passed, there's been some more time to do some surveys and research. We'll see what those numbers are, but it's looking like right now that reporting maybe isn't as high as we thought initially, but
Still could be.
it's still happening, and when they are reporting, it's more severe cases. I know for our program, our requests for orders of protection have risen pretty dramatically.
You may or may not know this answer. Because it's called Chautauqua Sunrise, we talk about Chautauqua County. So how does Chautauqua County stack up, let's just say, against itself in the 7 counties nearby? I mean, are we typical, high, low, average?
I don't have off the top of my head those statistics for sexual assault. I'd say we're probably average, but for child abuse, we are unfortunately very high.
Really?
The most recent stats, and I only know this because we wrote a grant not too long ago, we were ranked 8th and 6th in domestic violence and child abuse out of the, 60,
Yeah.
62 counties, 61.
Way that high.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's very sobering.
Well, we have a high level of poverty in this community. It's
Unemployment,
rural.
yeah.
There's not as, I think we have really great resources for being a rural county, but compared to other counties where you have, larger cities and you can have Erie County, for example, they have multiple offices for domestic violence. They have substations scattered throughout the county. So for folks to be able to, even within walking distance, be able
Access,
to get to an office.
Transportation issues, as always. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. You have some events coming up.
We do.
So
well,
let's
actually,
chat a little bit.
I don't have events coming up.
Somebody
we have
does.
We have this great coalition in our community, the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Coalition. Project Crossroads heads that up, and Project Crossroads is a program out of Jamestown Police Department. They have one officer, the DVO, who is Emma Ward now, and Elizabeth Bracey, who is the civilian advocate, and they oversee the coalition. We have a lot of different agencies who are active in our coalition. And so we have, every year we try to do some kind of awareness events, and because of COVID, we're trying to still be COVID safe. A lot of things are virtual, but we are going to have Wear Teal Tuesdays, because the original Awareness Day was the first Tuesday in April. And anybody who wants to participate, wear teal, make a little sign, they can take the pictures and then we'll post them. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, so we'll put them out there in the community, kind of like a virtual walk almost, but it's just Wear Teal Day.
I'm trying to think if I own anything that's teal.
Anything even close to teal, right?
All right.
Anything close
It's like
to
a
teal.
greenish blue, right?
Yeah,
Somewhere there.
yep. And then on the 28th of April, we are going to be doing Denim Days. And that is in relation to a European case where initially they threw out the case because they said the woman's jeans were so tight that she had to have given consent for the sexual assault to have happened.
Jeans?
And jeans, yeah, she had skinny jeans on. And eventually that was overturned. And so we're going to do a Denim Day event. We may be doing some other events that will be coming up, and we'll be posting those. But those are the two that we know we have
Jeans.
planned right now.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, it used to be dresses, you know. We were wearing a dress, so we were asking for it because we were wearing our short skirts, and I'm being facetious
I
here, of
understand.
course. But and now it's
always you.
denim's
It's
too
always
tight.
you.
Our denim's too tight.
Too tight jeans. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what advice would you give parents that are listening right now, grandparents? What should they tell their kids?
I think that, you know, everybody has a different comfort level, but some basics on healthy boundaries and what kind of touch is okay and what not kind of touch is okay. You know, you can teach kids the bathing suit. You know, I always suggest that they use the correct medical terms for their body parts, and let them know that it's okay to tell if something's happened or if someone has done something that they're not comfortable with, that it's okay to tell mom and dad need to believe that and then do, you know, follow up on that, what that situation was. And we have to teach kids that it's not just stranger danger, that we have to be careful of, you know, other people as well. And that can be hard and difficult and challenging too, right? Because we want to have good faith in our family and our friends and the people down the street, but we know from disclosures and research that those are the folks that are more likely. People who have the opportunity, and we've seen this, right, in the last 10 years or so between what's been going on in the Catholic Church and Boy Scouts and all those other things.
Oh, you had to bring that up. I forgot about that, yeah.
The folks that have that predisposition to be a pedophile are going to put themselves in situations where they have access to kids. And again, that goes back to that opportunistic. And we don't want to, you know, make our kids neurotic, but we have to teach them, you know, what is proper touch and what is not proper touch, and who should be touching you for what reasons, right? Who should be touching your bathing suit parts other than mom and dad if they're helping you with, you know, medical things or bathing, and so that's an easy way to start that conversation off.
You know, I always taught my kids and students that I worked with, and I know this seems simplistic, but I kept telling them, keep telling your story to every adult until you get to an adult that will actually listen to you. And they would look at me and I say, because a lot of times people aren't listening to you, they're not hearing you, and so if they don't respond, go to the next adult and the next adult. And if you run out of adults, I'm here. You know, when I was superintendent and so forth, or principal or administrator, whatever my role was over the years, teacher. And, you know, that seemed to be really assuring to kids to know that they need to do that keep telling your story. Right. Don't stop until somebody helps you.
People aren't going to know your secrets till you share them, right?
And whether or not you're being bullied or in this case assaulted or picked on or touched inappropriately, kids have a tendency to give up kind of early, you know, and then adults, then we've got to put on our big boy and girl pants and shoes and dresses and do something about it, you know, because a lot of times they say, oh, we'll take care of everything. Oh my God, they actually want us to do it. You know, now what do I do? But, you know, so I put myself out there quite often, and even with my grandkids, I always tell them, you know, Grandpa's here. I'll do whatever you need. But you got to tell me, you know, we're here for you. So. Stranger danger you've mentioned at least 3 times in your discussion here. So, what would you tell parents that are listening right now, or kids? How do you work with stranger danger nowadays? I mean, you said we don't want to be neurotic, but at the same time, you got to be cautious. And I mean, we've got the internet. We've got all these things that your opportunities are huge out there. You know? Yeah,
so my prevention educators are great when it comes to addressing things like the internet and the contact and how to be safe. We also have a children and family outreach program, and they are addressing a lot of those issues too. And it's really early. I mean, you know, kids as young as 10 or 11 or 12 are pretty savvy on the computer, and we know that that's where predators are, right? And are reaching out and finding kids and adults in that way. So, you know, as far as parents goes, you can put safety nets on your computer, right? You can track what kids are doing, and you can, as a parent, be a little more internet savvy to be able to follow that. And that's another conversation about strangers. And so we get to know people on this thing called Facebook, right? Or whatever other means we're using. And we don't always think that maybe people aren't using their real names, or, you know, maybe it's a fake profile, and we think, oh, we know that person, or that person is our friend because we've posted things back and forth and had private messages, and now we have this relationship. So that's a good point, because that's a different kind of relationship than one that you have in person, and you have to, you know, check things out. And is this person a real person? Is this person match this name? And you know, you don't ever meet anybody alone if you're having this relationship online, and you need to tell people about it so that they can, and you've got to trust your parents to be able to check it out to make sure that you're going to be safe and okay. It's scary. It's a whole nother realm of education, and what we used to think was, like, you know, little kids, when you walk home from school, walk in your little group, right? Don't stop when somebody pulls up in a vehicle and they want to give you something, or they've got a lost puppy, don't go with them. That used to be what we taught kids. Now it's a whole nother
old school.
That's old school, and that still happens,
yep.
But it is more and more on the internet, and trying to be savvy about how are we tracking what our kids are doing on the computer to help keep them safe.
I'm still shocked when I look at people's Facebook pages, even adults, the information that they put out there. I mean, they're just opening themselves up for all kinds of issues. Or the kids posting on Snapchat or Instagram, and and they want to be cute or sexy because that's what teenagers do. But they're not realizing that they're setting themselves up for a world of problems.
Yeah, what's that saying? The once you hit send, you can never take it back, right?
It's gone forever. It's way out there. Diana, we've got about 2 minutes left, and I'm going to let you pick the topic. What else should we talk about?
Oh gosh, I had so many things. So let's talk a little bit about the neurobiology of the brain and trauma. And there's this really great doctor. Her name is Rebecca Campbell, and you can Google her. She has done. She's got a ton of YouTube videos out there. She presented at UB School of Social Work a few years ago. We use her materials when we're training our staff, and she really gets in depth about how the trauma of sexual assault affects your brain and how your brain works. And she also is really great about training law enforcement and how to educate law enforcement and people who are doing investigations on what that looks like, because there are a lot of misconceptions on the victim's part. Why is she behaving that way, or why isn't she behaving that way? And the one thing, after being almost 23 years into this field, is that everybody reacts differently to being a victim of sexual assault. So you might have someone on one end that's very calm and quiet and collected, and then you might have somebody on the other end that you can't even understand them, and they're crying, and then you have everything in between. And that's okay, and that's normal. Whatever your reaction is a normal reaction to the assault.
Accept it and then dig in. Yeah.
Right, and so how that changes the way that your brain physically changes, and the chemical changes that happen, and how long that can last in your body. It's a really interesting work, and it's not just sexual assault, any major trauma. But certainly with sexual assault, I think that if people learn about that and are educated about that, it will make more sense on how people act when they're disclosing.
Okay, we've run out of time.
Yep.
And as always, thank you for sharing all this. What's the phone number again that people could call if they need to talk to you guys? 1-800-252-8748. And then the local hotline number is 661-3897. Okay. Diana Butcher has been my guest today. She's the program director of Salvation Army, a new program. Thank you for coming in. Folks, this is a serious topic, Do something if you know something, and if you're in the situation, talk to somebody, call these folks. Don't keep it in. It'll just eat you alive. I'm Doc Hamels, and we'll see you in April. Take care and enjoy the nice weather. Bye now.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Like I said.